How to build a Blackgates Sweet Pea 5-inch gauge locomotive. This one's part 23. The pony truck axle box guide bars are not a good fit. There are two alternatives to fix this problem: make new bars or modify the existing ones. In this clip you can clearly see that there's a lot of clearance between the axle box and the guide bars, and I think it is safe to say that the man who built the original locomotive did not build these parts. My first thoughts on an effective repair were to remake the guide bars and drill the holes offset. This model locomotive is imperfect in many ways, and I do not want to get into obsessive make every part perfect mode. I want every part that I make to be built to a good standard. I bought a length of 3/8 square steel bar from Blackgates Engineering, and here I'm marking the positions to cut them, although I only need to make the first cut. Once I have the first piece, I will use that as a template for the rest. I cut 4 of these lengths using my bandsaw, and then one by one I put them in my Smart & Brown lathe, which is fitted with a 4-jaw self-centering chuck. These sequences show me turning each part individually, but to machine the other end to the right length, I put all 4 in the chuck together. And then, in a moment of incompetence, not incontinence, I forgot to press the record button on the camera, and that is why the footage that you're currently watching shows me machining the individual bars. While I was doing this job, I was thinking it through in my head, and I realised that it was more difficult than I thought it was going to be. First of all, I have to get the bars to the exact same length. Then in one end of each of the bars I drill a hole slightly offset from the centre. Once those holes are drilled and tapped and fitted to the underside mounting plate, I would have to use the holes in the top plate to mark the other end of the bars, which then would need to be removed and re-drilled. Suddenly I realised that this was going to take a long time and could be fraught with difficulty. I've machined one end flat on 4 of the pieces of bar that I cut from the long piece, and here I'm using one of the original guide bars to mark the finished length on all 4 of the others. Then I had a light bulb moment, a moment of pure inspiration. Why not just enlarge the holes in the top and bottom plates to allow a little bit of adjustment of the position of the bars? Then drill the existing holes in the existing bars deeper and thread them 4BA. This means that I can use longer bolts and the entire structure will be a lot stronger. This threading operation was made a lot easier by using the small portable bench vise that I have. During the threading operation I use plenty of lubricant, because the last thing I want to happen is for the 4BA tap to break off in the hole. I only enlarge the holes in the top and bottom mounting plates 1 imperial drill size above the normal clearance size, which is 9/64, which is for 4BA. With the 4 guide bars mounted in position on the bottom plate, as you can see, the clearance is now fine between the 2 axle boxes and the 4 guide bars, which can never twist or into the brass strips that are soldered into the lower mounting plate. This is one of 2 parts that holds the springs in position. The trouble is, this was very sloppily made and didn't fit properly. It was too tight. I simply put it in the chuck of my Boxford lathe, and using a parting tool, I reduced the size so it fitted into the mounting plate perfectly. This clip shows both of the spring support cups in position on the top plate. If you look at this clip carefully, you will see that a couple of the holes have been filed oval to fit. Whoever built this was not very good at drilling holes. Here I'm assembling the completed unit. 3 bolts went in perfectly, but the last one was very slightly out of line. If you look at this image, you will see that. I carefully assembled it using a screwdriver to put a tiny bit of pressure on the guide bar. Here's a more detailed view of what I was doing. I only had to exert sufficient pressure so that the screw thread started in the hole. Here I'm testing the suspension, and all is well. And yes, there's still a bit of clearance between the guide bars and the axle boxes, but not very much at all. This is only a pony truck. If these were the main driving wheels, it would be a different story altogether. Now it's time to fit the pivot plate that I made. I showed this in detail in the last episode. The bolt sizes look a little bit wrong, but they're not, they're perfect, because I want to use lock nuts on this part. It is really important that this never works loose and drops off when the locomotive is running. I've turned the part around so you can see the top view, and yes, everything's fine. And it's a lot better than it was originally. The next part I need to fit is the thrust bearing block. This presses against the underside of the drag beam and takes the weight of the rear end of the locomotive when it's running. The two holes in the middle of the pivot plate is for a spring mechanism to control the side play of the pony truck, as well as hold it when you lift the engine off the track. A simple device, but very clever. I'll show that later. That's all for now. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.